All right, welcome back to the SundayPuncher podcast, and no more fake Simon. We have got the real one with us. Welcome back, Simon.
Thank you. It's good to be back.
Good, and Jason's here too. But Simon, people probably want to know, where were you? Why have you been gone so long? Why did they have to endure Dean? So where were you?
Endure's a poor word. He did a fantastic job in my absence. I've listened through. He does some good bits and pieces. My only jealousy was that I was away for David Price's third knockout loss.
I know.
I've been championing David twice for a long time, and being able to be the first to make the David thrice joke, I felt like that was a birthright of mine, and I've lost that. So that's a sad thing. But no, I've been away. I've been out in Russia. I've been out in Sweden. Been out in a few different countries around sort of Northern Europe. Just on a holiday, seeing some bits and pieces.
What'd you see while you were out there? Anything interesting?
Loads of things, but I think that it would steer this podcast significantly off course. In a nutshell, I saw things like the Hermitage out in St. Petersburg's big palace / museum of treasures and things like that. And then more fun, leisure type stuff. I went to Ice Bar in... Where was that? In Sweden. So, the whole thing's made of ice. Cups made of ice. Everything's made of ice. It's an ice bar. And that was really cool. So, yeah, it was a good time away.
That's really cool. But none of that was as interesting as Luke Campbell's 10th round stoppage of Tommy Coyle last night. So, Coyle goes down 4 times. Campbell improves to 12-0. And now Luke Campbell sits as the most promising lightweight prospect in the world. You guys want to tell me I'm crazy or agree?
No, I've been making that statement since before this fight even. This fight was far more exciting and tense than I expected it to be. I thought that Campbell would get through Coyle a lot quicker than he did, and Coyle showed tremendous heart, and he really knew what he was doing stylistically to make the fight, to fight the best fight he could have. And when he woke up the next day, he wouldn't have felt that he didn't do his best or that he left something in the ring. He fought the best fight he could have done, and fair play to him. And it was a fantastic event as a result.
That's absolutely accurate. I think Tommy Coyle did just give everything he possibly could give. And this fight reminded me a lot of the Lomachenko-Salido fight, where Coyle pulled every old man trick out that he could think of.
Yeah.
And, Coyle isn't a former world champion like Salido, so there's a difference there. But Campbell also, despite being Britain's greatest amateur probably ever, doesn't have the pedigree that Lomachenko does. And Campbell passed this test with I don't know, would you say he got a much better score than Lomachenko did on his first real test.
Yeah.
Jason, what did you think after I spoiled the fight for you?
Well, I don't know that I'd say. I was in the middle of the 6th round when you text me the results.
Shouldn't have waited so long.
I'm not gonna bite that. Campbell looked great. Did a fantastic job. I don't want to actually make that fight analogous to Lomachenko-Salido. I think it's kind of a poor analogy. Salido's such a better boxer that I think it's kind of unfair.
Well, I think
I'm sure you were making veteran tactics and things like that. Like, I just don't. I think it was a poor analogy. Salido came in overweight. He came in with a massive size advantage. There was just so much less that Lomachenko could have done because of those things. But as far as looking good, yeah, I mean, definitely Campbell looked better. He looked fantastic. He knocked the guy down 4 times. He was just completely on point from the first round. He dealt with that reckless aggression really well. If I did want to be critical of him, he seemed to tie up a lot. Well, when they were tied up, he seemed to have zero clue what to do. Coyle would rush in head first. Campbell would tie up like deer in the headlights and just look at the ref are you gonna break us up? Are you gonna break us up?
Yeah, that point worried me as well, the clinches.
Needs to learn how to deal with that more effectively rather than look to the ref for help, because had that been Salido on the inside, would have been beating his ass up.
Yeah,
So
I
again, I
feel
don't think
that
it's the right analogy. But
it was less looking to the ref for help. In my opinion, Campbell's too nice and he's too
Yeah.
proper and he's too much of a good guy. And so he'd leave clinches by raising both his arms in the air and saying, look, I'm not trying to cause this clinch. I'm being a good boy. I'm going to back out of this. And doing
right,
that is going to get you knocked out by somebody like Salido. Because
exactly.
just you raising your arms, the other person's free to hit you, and the referee hasn't told you to stop boxing. You know, they're the sort of things that the pro scene will take advantage of if you're naive enough to let it. And
Yeah,
so
and
it
that's why
worried
I'm
me a
saying
bit.
that Coyle is not analogous to Salido. You know
No,
what I mean?
it's
Like
that he didn't go as dirty. He definitely
exactly.
used pro
He
tricks, and
used
he
tricks.
used things that a veteran would be expected to deal with. But he
Yeah,
wasn't
but
as dirty or as vicious about it as Salido was, and I think that part
so
of that stems from they have a respect and a relationship that
right,
predates this
though
match.
the two of them do, right? A pretty deep
Mm, yeah,
relationship from what I could
Coyle's not
tell.
going to spark him on a break.
Exactly.
They have too much. He'd want to do it legitimately.
But I
Um,
don't know. I'll tell you what. Campbell's face though, when they were tied up, looking to the ref, not looking to the ref to save him in any way, but just looking to the ref to like immediately like break it up every time, was just like
mm.
it seems strange. Like, hey, why don't you try to work on the inside a little bit? Like this guy's giving you a great opportunity to work on your inside game right now. He's
Or
coming in
regain your distance on your own. There's ways you can
exactly.
deal with it.
There's ways you could do
Well,
with it.
it was a
Just
little tough because Coyle's leading with his head. I mean, you
leading
can
with his head
count a lot
constantly.
of the times when he was actually headbutting Campbell, either
Right.
in the chest or I think he got him once pretty good in the chin.
Mm.
And I think Campbell just didn't want to deal with that. Like
Time up, do
the
a little bit of
problem there
lateral
was that
movement, step around
Coyle's
him.
pretty short, and he was like the perfect height to headbutt him right in the face as he was coming in. I don't think there was too much concern here. I think Campbell is going to learn
Yeah,
from this, just like we saw Lomachenko learn in his
Right.
next time out how to deal with somebody who's trying to get inside. What I really liked though was that when Coyle was coming inside and leading with his head, Campbell was immediately smothering him and getting into the clinch. And while Coyle would be the one who was holding, Coyle also couldn't do anything because they were chest to chest.
Right. Nobody could get any work done while they
Right.
were in the clinch. Yeah.
yeah.
In those
I don't want to
instances,
overemphasize the flaw. The only reason I even bring it up is because, as you know, I expect the world from Luke. So any flaws or even niggles in his game plan, I'm going to be critical of because I have that high standard of expectation for him. But I mean, in terms of the stuff he did right, there's a laundry list. He fought fantastically throughout.
yeah, I think
His
you're being more
decisions
critical than
versus.
me.
And it's not a desire to be critical. It's just everyone wants to know, was it flawless? And the answer is not quite, but it was very good.
No, it was
Uh,
very good, and it was. I think if anything, it will be a good, an even better learning experience when he goes back and watches the tape,
mm,
because he did do a fantastic job. But there's plenty to learn from there too.
totally.
Which is the exact kind of fight you need at his level. You need a
Mm.
fight where you go out there, you win, you look good, but there's still something you could work on. And, you get back in the gym and you figure it out.
Right, and Campbell's the
Somebody
kind of
said
guy.
leading up to this fight that the real magic of this fight is that Eddie Hearn succeeded in making it interesting because this is going to be a showcase fight where somebody gets blown out in a round or two and everyone's going to lap it up. And I don't think that could have been further from the truth in terms of what we got. That's not the fight that came out.
Well, and the
It
other
was a
thing
pretty
is,
one-sided beatdown.
well, it was a tough fight because Campbell didn't get. It wasn't easy for him, and
No.
that's thanks to Tommy Coyle. But anybody who thought that this was just going to be an easy showcase fight, like, way to not give Coyle any credit. This dude has tremendous amount of heart, and you saw that last night. Like he just kept getting up. You could tell he was in pain. The last round, he was hurt from earlier in the
Biting
round.
down, trying
Yep.
to be a professional, yeah.
And so it was the perfect fight that Campbell needed because it's one of those fights where Campbell learned, if he hadn't learned already, like this is what professional will and grit looks like. It's much different than the amateurs, and it's much different than when you face the journeyman and all that stuff. Like
Even, right, the lower ranks of the professionals, it's significantly different. This is somebody who's going to keep standing back up.
and
This is someone who wants to beat you and deep down thinks that there's a chance they can.
and
Exactly.
these guys like Coyle, and I would put him in the same category that Bradley's in, where they don't win because they're necessarily the most skilled, because they can easily be outskilled by faster, stronger guys. But what you can't beat them in is in their will to win, and their willingness to do whatever it takes to win. And this is gonna, like, fighting Bradley makes a lot of guys better because they just get to see, oh, okay, that's what it looks like to really want to win. And Quayle's the same way. Campbell's gonna learn from that, and I think going forward in the lightweight division, I don't really think Campbell has any trouble with any lightweight except for Zlatikanen. Dejan
I don't even know
Zlatikanen.
about. I made a comment earlier today in a Reddit thread, and I talked about how the lightweight division is kind of difficult to read above where Luke is currently.
Yeah.
In certain divisions, there's a very clear roadmap to the sort of up and comings, gatekeepers, top contenders, champion, and there's a very clear roadmap on who you want to beat in what order. But everything above Luke now is kind of murky. I don't think that there's any real authority in the division, and so matchmaking is going to be just as much luck as it is skill.
Yeah, but I think Zlatikanen is as close as you could come to.
I think it's just a bad style matchup.
But he's got a very good resume for the amount of fights that he has. He has a lot of names on his resume. He's gonna be a tough fight for any lightweight out there.
Before we jump off, I want to see what you guys think of Campbell versus a few guys. What about Campbell and Burns, Ricky Burns?
So what is it you're asking us? Who's going to win, or what sort of fight it's going to be?
Who wins?
That Campbell wins that fight.
Yeah, I'd feel comfortable for Campbell in that fight. But again, I think that would be like what we saw with Coyle, but to a slightly harder degree, because Burns has that extra sort of, he's teetered around world level for a lot longer and has more tricks.
I don't think Burns is going down I don't think Burns is going down, 4 times. I think it's a fight that Burns could end up on his feet at the end of it, but have lost decision.
Disagree with you guys. I think the problem that Coyle had was that he was short and was in Campbell's chest really easily. Burns is a pretty big lightweight. He's like 5'9" or 5'10", which is the same size as Luke, meaning he's going to be on the outside trying to box, and that's going to be a recipe for disaster.
I think it's going to be, that's going to play to Campbell's strengths, if anything, because I expect Luke to be at light welter in years to come.
And maybe next year. 2 years.
I don't know about that soon, maybe. Yeah, 2 years probably.
Remember, guys, he's 28?
He's 28. Oh, wow. Okay.
Just turned, yeah. But you have to remember, he's young in the terms of like the sport itself. He hasn't taken damage over a lengthy career. He's been amateur for a while. He's got his gold medal comes from 2012, so it's not like he's behind in terms of progress compared to where any other gold medalist from that Olympics is.
All right, guys.
It's on track, really.
Just answer who you think wins these questions, because you guys keep making this take. You guys keep like drawing me off.
All right.
I'm easy to just derail.
To get off course, yeah.
Campbell versus Kevin Mitchell.
Campbell.
Yeah, comfortably.
Campbell versus Mickey Bay.
I'd still say Campbell close. That's a closer fight.
I had to pause for thought, but yeah, Campbell.
And Campbell versus Gamboa.
That's another.
When does that
fight
fight happen? Campbell's not ready for Gamboa yet. Gamboa will make it ugly and probably win on a decision at the moment, because I think that Gamboa is one of those people that just makes you look terrible. Give him the right step-up fights, and then he'll happily deal with it. But the Campbell who fought last night isn't ready to deal with, a rascally Gamboa.
That's what I'm thinking. Gamboa will be able to throw him off his game plan in a second and just make it ridiculously difficult right now.
All right, Campbell versus Danny Garcia, who just stopped
What?
Paulie Malignaggi in 9
The
rounds.
welterweight.
I'm just kidding. Although I wouldn't be surprised if Campbell's fighting at welterweight in a few years.
Hell of a segue.
Yeah.
Just wanted to make sure you guys are paying attention.
The irony is I talk about being easy to derail and then bring Danny Garcia into proceedings. So
well, now we're on the Malignaggi Garcia fight. That's fine.
Danny is the one who derailed Amir Khan and derailed Lucas Matisse. So
I
think the transition is perfect.
That must
Stop talking over me. Damn it.
Were you guys impressed at all with what Danny Garcia did last night?
I think it's going to be easy to discredit his victory if you don't like him. I think if you're more neutral or objective, per se, about it, you could look at that fight and say, man, he did a really good job. I think the bottom line is he had Paulie Malignaggi in a defensive posture from about the 3rd, 4th round on, where Paulie was strictly just trying to not get knocked out. So he completely abandoned any offense. Now, that's a scary place to be as a fighter, because now all you're doing is fighting to not get knocked out. So obviously Danny was showing him something that was worrying him and troubling him. So I say just on that fact alone, that he was able to get Paulie in that posture so quickly, give the kid a little bit of credit.
After that point, the fight became very difficult to watch until maybe it was a 9th round stoppage. I think it was in the 6th or 7th round where Garcia made an adjustment where he started bending with Paulie because Paulie kept bending towards his right to avoid Danny's right hand. And it every time you do that, they'd get into a clinch. And once Garcia did that, he started to open Malignaggi up. And by the 8th and 9th round, he was landing, what felt like 50% of the punches he was throwing.
And he was throwing hard shots. I don't know if making it down to 140, 142 or whatever he's been fighting at recently was, taking a little bit out of him. But man, did his power carry up. Now you see somebody like Broner, whose power just didn't follow him to 147. Garcia's the exact opposite example. His power traveled up nice, don't you guys think?
Well, I want to point out last week that I said that Garcia's power will travel up because maybe this is why they took him so long. Well, it wasn't even that long. It was 2 fights. He had 2 fights at catchweight.
2 fights over 18 months or something.
Right. And I mean, like, the Batiste fight, I think that was at 141. That doesn't really count because it was a pound higher, and I think he still weighed in like at 139.
Well, I thought that was... No, that was at 140. No, because the lineal championship was on the line for that. That was at 140. Remember. It was the subsequent fight.
But, fair enough. And Garcia, there was some shots where he's landing. I don't even know if Paulie was blocking because of the camera angle, but you could hear them thudding. I was like, wow, that hit him in the chest or in the stomach or wherever.
The jab to the chest.
Like,
how
are you not going down?
Oh, my God. That was a thing of beauty, though. I thought that was beautiful. It's one of those things where you just hit him wherever you can. And that jab to the chest all night, it was just, I thought that was fantastic. People might say, oh, it wasn't on his stomach, it wasn't on his chin. I was happy with that punch. Well, just with the accuracy behind it, and the accuracy and the power and the frequency.
If you saw Teddy Atlas's pre-fight plan, he was talking about, you don't throw the jab typically to the stomach. I mean, it's typically not thrown at the chest, but it does stabilize your opponent when you throw it at the chest, and it gets them to stop being so defensive or change how they're defending. And it opens them up, which is, we've seen Garcia do it. We've seen a lot of fighters or their trainers tell them, like, just start throwing the jab at the chest. Simon, you haven't really spoken much. What did you think of Danny?
So, in terms of matchmaking, people will be critical of it and say that Malignaggi has been, over the hill and isn't a solid test for Danny at 147. The problem is that we get people like Pacquiao fighting people like Rios. This isn't too different a matchup in terms of where these people are at. And you have to remember that if it's his first fight at the weight, you could have easily had him fight someone like Bonet that's like a, tangential, just a getting ready sort of tune-up fight for the division. I think it was a fairly, he bit off a good challenge to fight at the new weight. Paulie's a tested person who's, granted not been outstanding in the division, but he's been a consistent, credible opponent, and I think that he was a credible opponent even in that fight. So matchmaking, people being critical of that, it's a tough one. And I think a lot of it stems from Danny's regarded by many as an accomplished fighter. He appears on, pound-for-pound top lists frequently. And people will look at the fights like Sauka and the Herrera fight, and they'll say that this is someone who is being gifted things and that hasn't earned it. And the problem is that with the binary logic people use, where it has to be 100% one way or 100% the other, that they'll look at a Rod Sauka fight and say, this guy is garbage. No, that fight is garbage. The fighter is still credible. Their accomplishments still exist. And Danny is a good fighter. I think the reason that they've played around with catchweights for so long is that they didn't want Danny in the division while it was still possible that he could get fights with Mayweather, Pacquiao, people like that would be really problematic for him. But now that those two are sort of going into their final stages now, Danny can come, and I think that he's competitive, if not beats, probably every welterweight out there at the minute. There's a couple that would be very close and interesting, but you couldn't deny, I don't think, that Danny will be a dominant force at 147 in a post-Pacquiao-Mayweather environment.
That's a great point. So you're a big Saddam Ali fan, so you got to
Hmm.
pick who wins between those two.
It's a great matchup again, but probably I edge Danny because Danny's got and people criticize Danny as well. I've seen a lot of buzzing around last night of he's straightforward or boring, that he just throws 1, 2. There's no creativity or imagination with his shots. You could say that about Klitschko, and people do. It works. There's a reason that people go textbook. It's because the textbook typically has the best result. That's why it's the textbook. And I think that Danny does that in such a way that he'd be a problem for Saddam Ali or any other up and coming at that weight.
What
Well,
about
I
Kell
think the
Brook?
more, yeah, there we go.
I think Kell Brook's size would make it interesting because he's big for the weight. I think that Kell Brook would be a really interesting matchup, and I'd be tough pressed to pick between them. I'd want to see them progress a bit more, to be honest.
When people criticize Garcia for those fights, like the Salka fight, it's like, he did respond in that fight like an excellent fighter does. And what did he do? I mean, he almost killed Salka. His head almost did a 360.
Hmm.
And isn't that what any excellent fighter does? If you put a Rod Salka type of opponent in a fight with Mayweather, he does the same thing. And before you say that Andre Berto is that fighter, no. At least Berto fights at welterweight. So I thought Garcia's really, if we look at his career, he's had one fight where it was like, I don't know about that. And that was the Herrera fight. Fair enough. But a lot
He's
of the
not
top
the judges.
fighters
He's
have
not his
had,
matchmaker.
a lot of fighters have had fights like that. Look at any top fighter. Maidana got him. Amir Khan, who I guess is a top fighter, was almost stopped by Maidana. And I'm gonna, forgive the Prescott and everything before he met up with Freddie Roach, but he almost got stopped by Maidana and was still regarded as the top super lightweight in the world heading into that Garcia fight. So
Yeah, and I don't want people to hear this and think that me or us are massively high on Danny and think he's pound for pound the best. That's not the case. It doesn't have to be all one way or all the other. It's just that he gets a bad rap for some of his, and they are poor matchups and poor decisions. But notwithstanding,
But
he
it
is
was
still
two.
a very accomplished fighter. Yeah, exactly. Out of a career where he's a good fighter and he is going to go on to do good things.
yeah, and the hate for his dad, fine, fair game. Let's talk about Danny Jacobs and unfortunate ending to that fight, which was turning out to be a wild one. Jacobs drops Mora in the first round, gets himself dropped like 12 seconds later, and then Mora breaks his ankle in the second round, and we did get confirmation through Mora's Twitter that it was indeed a broken ankle.
We didn't really need that confirmation because he did say at the time that he knows what one feels like and that it was that. So fair enough, to be honest.
Yeah, he seemed like he knew right away what happened. If anything, about that fight, Peter Quillen should be thanking his lucky stars. Peter Quillen's another one of those boxers that people just hate for a lot of the same reasons that they don't like Danny. And Daniel Jacobs' post-fight interview where he denied Mora the rematch garnered Jacobs so much fan dislike. I think if we actually see a Danny Jacobs versus Peter Quillen fight, Peter Quillen will be the one that fans are
pick up some fans. Yeah.
Yeah. So Peter Quillen should be thankful that Danny Jacobs gave such a crappy post-fight interview, because I think if that fight ever happens, fans will just want to see Jacobs get knocked out again because they'll forget that he's been knocked out before.
Silliest part of it was him implying that he has any control whatsoever about selecting what opponents put in front of him.
I mean, Haymon makes the fights with both of those guys, and he's trying to act like he's the A side, and that was great.
Like he can dictate that.
Yeah.
You hope that they get a rematch
now,
like 8 weeks later,
but
just to
be honest,
shut up on that front.
To be honest, I don't want to see a rematch. Like, I would rather see Jacobs fight Quillen now, because now that I know that Jacobs is going to get dropped if he gets reckless, and he can be dropped. And I mean, obviously we've seen him get stopped by Pirog, but that was kind of a long time ago. But now that we see that Jacobs is susceptible to flash knockdowns, just like Peter Quillen is, that is going to be one of the wildest middleweight fights you can make right now.
I'd probably rather see him become a good boy, but failing that, yeah, of course, that matchup makes a lot of sense. It's a lot of fun.
That's not going to happen.
No, I this is the reality.
Because Golovkin's going to get knocked out by Lemieux.
I don't like to feel. I don't like to feel like we're
I was hoping I could slip that in without you guys responding.
Never, but I don't like feeling like we're precluded from speculating about those fights. Just because we're aware of the political divides between promotional camps doesn't mean that we shouldn't be talking about what would happen between X and Y.
Because I think who's the actual best in the division.
And this stunts us as fans of a sport that's a world united sport and brings us into little pockets where I watch these promoters, you watch these promoters. That's not the world we live in. There's a division, it's middleweight, and these are the people in it.
Well, I mean, in this case, it's pretty obvious that Jacobson is a step below Golovkin, and Quillen. I don't think it's as big of a step, but it is a step.
They're both a long step. Like if you're standing on that step and you're looking down, you're scared to jump.
I don't know about that. I think Quillen has to trust his power. I don't know if he does, but I think Quillen should trust his power because the dude does have some power. And him and Jacobs, that's one of the outside of Golovkin Lemieux, which I don't think is going to be that good because if Golovkin hits him right, he's going to go to sleep. But Jacobs Quillen is going to have a bunch of flash knockdowns.
Yeah, Lemieux's going to be like a dreidel. He's just going to be spinning. Like it's not going to be a long night unless Golovkin wants it to be a long night because people paid for the pay-per-view. You see what he lets people do for him when he just fights on HBO. Imagine how competitive he's going to make it when they're making people pay for a pay-per-view to watch him fight.
No, he needs to be like Ronda Rousey and make everybody wait 5 hours and then end his fight in 30 seconds.
Don't you dare.
All right, Joseph Parker got his 15th win. He knocked out Bowie Tupu, I think is his name. First round knockout, and Dillian White also stopped Irinu Costa in the first round. So Joseph Parker is, one of the heralded prospects out of New Zealand. Looks good. I think he's a little reckless. And Dillian White is knocked Costa out with a punch to the top of the head, and he's going to fight Anthony Joshua very soon. So this is your domain, Simon. You're the big heavyweight fan and also the fan of Dillian White, so go for it.
I don't want to conflate the two because both are worth thinking about in their own rights, and you know that I'm a sucker for the heavyweight division. So to look first at the one that is going to be further out in the Parker fight. Parker is like he's a bit of a throwback as a heavyweight, but in the good sense that he's got that sort of rugged determination. He's got a lot of presence and force in his punches, but he can also take, he gets clipped with things as well. He's not like a fluid defensive wizard by any means.
No.
And as a result, he's going to be in competitive and really entertaining fights. He is going to, he'd be problematic for most people in the division right now, and he's going to go on to do some great stuff.
He fights like a small guy.
For that exact reason, I think that he's going to hit the American scene, and you'll see him mixing it with the Staverns, Areolas, Jennings, those sort of fighters, because you get the sense that he's beatable. He doesn't feel like he's got that aura of invincibility around him.
Yeah.
He just seems very good. And for that reason, I think that promoters will be willing to take a gamble with their guys, and maybe even eventually Wilder takes that sort of fight.
With what we've seen from Wilder when he gets into his whole windmill action, Parker versus Wilder would be just a ridiculous fight.
Yeah, I mean, if the thing is, because Wilder's got the most prestigious belt in the world right now, there'll be pressure on him. There'll be pressure on him to take a competitive matchup, and they're not going to be dumb enough to go with Povetkin or Klitschko because they're sort of foregone conclusions. But if Parker can get enough steam behind him, they might think, you know what, this guy will be seen as a credible opponent, and will get credit for that. And there's also the sort of instinct that maybe he is beatable. So I think that will be his in to the American scene.
If you're listening to this right now, do your part and go look at Joseph Parker. Go watch his YouTube videos. Go get excited for his next fight, which is already scheduled for some time in the coming weeks or something. And tell your friends about him, because Joseph Parker is exactly as advertised. He's exciting and sometimes a little concerning with how exciting he is, because a smart fighter is going to make him pay someday.
And bottom line, if you're in the United States, call your congressman. Tell him you want to see Joseph Parker.
the American heavyweight scene's a little bit insular right now, where there's they've got the ball and they won't let anyone else play with it.
We have the champion.
Exactly. And I think that Parker may well be the stepping stone to the rest of the world, because there's a big wide division right now in heavyweight, and there's a lot of people that want to come knocking.
Bottom line, Wilder, Tony Thompson, get out of here.
Yeah. So then moving on to section B of that is we were looking at Dillian Whyte. Dillian Whyte, to people that don't know, is a British heavyweight prospect. He's undefeated as now, and his claim to fame, as it were, is that he knocked down Anthony Joshua in the amateurs and then went on to win by decision.
Tough time to be a British heavyweight prospect.
Yeah, this is it, is that you're in the big man's shadow. Because Anthony Joshua's already cracked world interest. There's lots of international intrigue, and Dillian Whyte less so. But when you mentioned that he's beaten Anthony Joshua as an amateur, that's suddenly going to get people's interest, because they think,
he kind of whooped him too.
So this, if you to see Dillian Whyte, he has the sort of frame and physique of like a Derek Chisora style fighter. He's very physical. He's going to brutalize you, so you don't want to let him get too close necessarily. So he was on the Luke Campbell card last night in order to get some exposure, so that some of the more casual audience can get to see him on TV and get to figure out what he's about and get ready for that. Because I think that Eddie's going to be quite dedicated to making them two. Provided they both win their next fights, they'll be fighting in November. I'm sure of that.
And for anybody who is gonna criticize AJ for what I just said, that Dillian whipped him when they were amateurs, AJ had been boxing for 10 minutes.
Can I get to this? When AJ sort of went amateur, he in his early career kind of felt like he was Mike Tyson, and he'd try
exactly.
He did. He'd get inside on people, trying to fly little short uppercuts and short hooks, and with his size, and it's just all wrong for him to be doing that. And if you imagine that against a Derek Chisora built type guy, and they're stood toe to toe in each other's chests exchanging bombs, you can see why one person would get knocked down and that person wouldn't be the Chisora build person. Just to fight someone like him, you need to set up the jab and play smart and use your boxing skills in order to deliver the payload, rather than just stand in the trench and exchange warheads. So I think that Anthony, in his pro career, has learned the lessons, sparred with the right people, and is a much different fighter to that. And that's why when they meet later this year, it'll be a totally different story to the last time. But the most interesting factor is going to be, will pride and psychology come into it, where AJ second guesses himself and the doubts creep in, and it starts to dismantle all the good work that he's put into getting to where he is. So it is going to be an exciting build up. I mean, AJ is going to be a huge betting favorite, but I don't think that it'll be as one-sided as the bookies will.
I don't know about that. I actually think Whyte will be the closest opponent AJ's had thus far, even closer than Kevin Johnson. I think a lot of people are going to stupidly look at that amateur fight, look at or read how it went down, and they're going to let that influence how they bet, which is kind of stupid. Maybe. Because AJ is not that guy anymore. He is not that guy at all. If you look at that, AJ looks scared. He looks like he doesn't know what he's doing. And Whyte looks like a guy who's been boxing for years. And I literally mean, when AJ fought, he had been boxing for less than a year at that point, because he took it up kind of late. So now let's jump onto the news. MGM sent out an email to its VIPs saying that it is indeed going to be Mayweather versus Berto. We don't know if that's confirmed. We do think that it is, but only one person's come out and said, "Hey, I got this email." So,
can I ask you a question?
Sure.
When's the last time a Mayweather fight announcement has come via MGM email?
Well, the thing is, it leaked. It wasn't supposed to be sent out. They jumped the gun, and I'm assuming that MGM is getting paranoid, because it's cutting it really close. I mean, this is the latest fight announcement for a Mayweather fight, I think, ever. Unless he filled in 2 weeks late for an opponent early in his career. But this is really late for any pay-per-view fight, not just a Mayweather fight. And, since it is Mayweather, you can get away with it.
And so let's think. We're only 6 weeks out, right? At the time of recording, basically?
I believe so.
We're only 6 weeks out.
Mayweather's not even going to show up for a press conference at this point.
Yeah, well,
HBO can't even do their At Last Mayweather Birdo. I'm a little bummed by that.
That's really going to be upsetting for a lot of fans.
Jeez. Victor Ortiz was arrested this week for assault in Pasadena, where I'm going to be having dinner tonight for my little sister's birthday. I'm sure you guys are thrilled to talk about that. WBA ordered an immediate rematch for Anthony Crolla versus Darlis Perez. Now, you were away for this one, Simon.
I've seen it, and I had internet on the cruise, as you'll know, so I was up to date via Skype through you lot. But it's gonna make a lot of people. My dad even texted me while I was on the ship to say that it was a bum decision, that he was upset with how that went. So I think that a lot of people will be happy with that rematch being ordered.
Yeah, and it's a great story that Crolla just almost pulled it off, and I just really hope that Crolla didn't peak that night. All right,
That's
Rock Nation.
a possibility. Yep.
Rock Nation, talking about peaking, wants to put Andre Ward as the co-main event in the Canelo Cotto pay-per-view, and there's a rumor that they're really going to do this. You were going to order anyway, right, Jason?
Canelo Cotto?
Yeah, like Andre Ward is just like
of
a
course,
cherry on
Andre
top.
Ward, but
Co-main event. That's a artificial. It's on the undercard, isn't it? Correct. Whatever fight happens, there's going to be one main fight, no matter how you dress it up. You could say there's 5 main fights, and none of them are, but we'll all know really that there are undercard fights.
No, you're buying that fight anyways. It's interesting that Ward is willing to kind of like take a back seat, because he's usually the kind of guy who would want to be the main event of a pay-per-view fight,
But the thing is that because it's going to do such good numbers from a bargaining point of view, the next time they're sitting down at the table with anyone, Ward's going to say, look at my co-main event pay-per-view figures. What are your pay-per-view figures? And they'll say, hang on, but weren't you not... Shush, see there? Co-main event, these numbers.
1.3, 1.3.
So you guys think this is a direct correlation to it being announced that Mayweather... No. Hang on, please. That Golovkin versus Lemieux is a pay-per-view. Now Ward's got to get himself on a pay-per-view for the bargaining table for that fight.
No. You don't want to bring that up. You're going to ruin it. Rock Nation doesn't want anybody to have that thought. Ward is a star. 1.3. Andre Ward, co-main event. Like, obviously, you know that
it's as simple as
you
that.
have to be right, Jason, that obviously, why would they put Andre Ward as a co-main event? If he could headline his own card, I mean, maybe not a pay-per-view. If this is some some tactic to, I guess you could say, negotiate with with Golovkin in the future, if Golovkin wins,
and that's a big if.
I'm doing my best to sell this fight, guys. Help me out.
The thing is, you can sell a fight that you know is going to be one way. It's I love watching AJ against Journeyman. He's going to blow out. Like, people like watching certain things, and you like watching Golovkin against, I'd watch rematches with many of his opponents, even though we've seen what's happened. It's just fun to see him in action.
Oh, would you be willing to pay $60 though?
I agree.
I think the pay-per-view element complicates things a little bit. But
the hate for Golovkin is so out of control. People just wanna hate him so bad lately.
It's the phases. The way that it works, everyone wants to feel like they're in the know and that they've spotted someone no one else has. So before anyone's getting recognized, fans are super positive about this. No, you haven't heard about this guy yet, but he's incredible because I've spotted him and I'm able to assess this. And then the later comers want to say, I actually know the truth. Your assessment was wrong. All you people that think he's good are overselling him, and he's actually terrible. And the funny thing is that they're both right. That the early fans are going to be overselling it, like we're probably overselling Parker. Parker might have a ceiling that is remarkably close to where he's going to hit. But the point is, because there's not the fandom yet, we want to get people interested, and so we're saying really positive things. And the second wave people are going to be doing the exact opposite and saying, this guy isn't nearly as good as you said. And so you get this sort of yo-yo until it balances out eventually about medium. But it's always that dynamic. And we're in the phase now where Golovkin is an established enough name that the cool opinion to have is that he sucks.
Ugh, so annoying.
It is annoying, but it's par for the course.
Or that the people who, when the newcomers finally come along, like, oh yeah, this Golovkin guy is good. I saw him on Sports Nation. Then they're like, oh, I don't want to like him anymore because now it's too mainstream.
It's too popular.
Let me find Evian Kitrov. I've never seen him before. This is the next best middleweight. And it's like, yeah, Kitrov's kind of been the next best middleweight for over 2 years now. But anyway, Lucas Matisse versus Victor Polsto. I think Matisse went through a phase where people kind of turned on him, and then they've come back since. But he's going to fight Victor Polsto, who does have this weird sort of following now. They're going to fight for the vacant WBC belt. And this is actually perfect because it's exactly with the Golovkin thing where people are highly overrating Victor Polsto because of one knockout against Selçuk Aydin, a guy who never made it to the world level, probably not even to the European level, just a good domestic fighter who fought on HBO and Showtime a couple of times. Polsto knocked him out with a pretty good uppercut. But you know what? Polsto also was being joked about by Marvin Somodio about his ability to take a punch while sparring at Wild Card. So
yeah, I think Matisse's been through that journey, hasn't he? Where his fans have gone away and come back. The provodical sons that have seen the light and come back to him. And I think that it's a really it's a good matchup ultimately.
I think it's a good matchup. I think it should be a relatively easy fight for Matisse, though. I think it should be a pretty one-sided. I think we'll end up seeing a pretty one-sided. Matisse's just been fighting at such a higher level.
This is it. And if he was in with someone that was limited, like John Molina Jr., it would be... it would actually be really compelling. So you don't know with Matisse.
Yeah, I suppose you don't. But I don't know. I don't know what Polsto...
I'm with you. On paper, it certainly looks that way.
Yeah.
But I've seen before Matisse not always line up with expectations.
Certainly, but I think Molina Jr. is not really the worst fighter either when he's on point, and he was. I think he was just super well prepared. I think you might have got Molina at his best for a couple rounds, and still that was only a couple rounds. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So we'll see.
Molina had some crazy confidence going into that fight, and I think because he knew that Matisse couldn't do anything.
Afraid.
Yeah,
he wasn't afraid.
I think he just knew one of us is getting knocked out here. He had no intention of getting outboxed because he knew that Matisse couldn't outbox him. So he was like, that's what I think. That it was like, it's you or me. That's what Molina gave him the confidence. I think Polsto could outbox Matisse for a little bit of the fight, but it's only a matter of time before Matisse puts him down. And I think we saw with Matisse in the Provodnikov fight, he's a little better at boxing than we give him credit for.
I think he's gotten better recently. I think he's gotten better recently because there's other fights that you can point to where he didn't do so good against other boxers, or he kind of just held his own. But I do think maybe he's gotten just a touch better.
Yeah. So next fight or next news thing, I guess, is Bradley versus Brandon Rios on November 7th for the WBO welterweight title, which maybe is Bradley's or maybe not. I don't know. Then there's a whole thing with Jesse Vargas and his protesting of the stoppage of that fight. But either way, Bob Arum doesn't care. Bradley versus Brandon Rios, November 7th is what's being discussed. How do you guys feel about this fight?
It's
a showcase fight for Bradley.
I think it's a stinker for both of them. Both of them are at their point where there's world titleists they aren't going to beat, and there's gatekeepers they're essentially keeping it in the family and going against each other, where they could be taking on young hungry people to sort the men from the boys type thing. Bring in a Sam Eggington type, bring in a Skeet. Those are the matchups. I you can laugh, but I'd like those matchups.
Everyone in America just laughed too. Don't worry.
That's fine. I'd rather that young up and coming or not up and coming was shut down by these people or upset by these people, rather than just have two gatekeepers that are not massively relevant fight out amongst themselves.
This is I think you really hit the nail on the head early on in that comment with Bob Arum keeping everything in house.
Yeah, I agree.
That's what this is about.
It's a shame.
Calling Bradley a gatekeeper, he has kind of played that role in his last couple fights, and unfortunately he kind of fought down to that level, it seems like. But this is a guy who also thoroughly outboxed Marquez. Let's not forget that too. Bradley's a good fighter. I know you guys like to discredit Bradley because you think, Pacquiao fans need to use him to prop up, Pacquiao's victories or whatever. But Bradley's a decent fighter. He really is. He's a very decent boxer. To call him a gatekeeper, I think is a little little much.
Does he beat Mayweather?
Does Bradley beat Mayweather?
Yeah.
He gives him a hell of a fight.
No, he doesn't.
I don't think so.
No. I think
I don't think he beats Brooke either.
I don't know about that. But
he definitely doesn't
you asked
beat
me, does he
Pacquiao.
fight literally the pound for pound best fighter in the world? I say, he could give a good fight.
We have to think about what the term gatekeeper means. There's a group of elite fighters at welterweight. Bradley isn't one of them. He's the gate to them. He's a gatekeeper.
I don't know. I disagree.
I mean, he's not the Chris Arreola type of gatekeeper. He's not.
I wouldn't even call Chris a gatekeeper, to be fair. But I think that gatekeeper is a subjective term, and if you've got some really standout, stellar people in that division, then what would be a champion in one division becomes a gatekeeper in another, and that's just the reality of things.
On par with. So, what do you consider the Thurman? What do you consider Thurman and that whole crew?
Prospects or really advanced contenders, yeah.
Okay, so Bradley just can't be a contender because of his age?
I think because he's already contended, and we saw what happened.
Well,
he lost to Pacquiao and he loses to Mayweather pretty obviously.
So because he's not at the literal two elitist fighters of the division, he's. Yeah, see, no,
exactly. Because
I'm not saying he's garbage. He's a good fighter. I'd always concede he's a good fighter. He's
not a gatekeeper for the division. Yeah,
it's like a pyramid. At the top you only have room for one or two guys, and then below that is the contenders who are like legit contenders, and then below that the gatekeepers to go into the top two. And I think Bradley fits in the third tier.
I think Bradley fits as a contender. I don't care about his advanced age or, that he's fought Manny Pacquiao twice. I think you could put him in with any of those top guys, and he's going to give him a hell of a fight.
Does he win?
Is he going to win him?
I mean, if he's the favorite, then I agree.
Could he beat Brooke? Yeah, he could beat Brooke.
I see. I disagree. I think that's probably where the difference lies.
Yeah, exactly. Right. So if I think that's a possibility, I'm going to, you know what I mean?
Then you think he's a contender. Yeah, totally. Yeah.
That's why it's hard for me to place him as a gatekeeper because I think that's a super competitive fight.
Well, that's something we disagree on. That doesn't happen very often. Let's see.
Yeah, you guys just got a hard on for Bradley because of the whole Pacquiao thing.
No, not at all. If anything, though, when I see him placed as number 4 pound for pound fighter, I have to be like, call it what it is. That's a poor choice. He's and just because I say he's not the number 3 or 4 in the sport doesn't mean I think he's garbage and should retire. He's a good fighter. He's credible. He'll give loads of people problems, just not the elite of the division.
That's the thing you were talking about earlier, Simon. Is it's all or nothing for a lot of boxing fans. It's either you hate somebody or you love them.
Well, that's what you guys are saying. It's all or nothing. Like if you can't beat Mayweather, you're not literally elite. Came out with the if you can't beat the pinnacle, he's a gatekeeper. That's all or nothing. That's as all or nothing as it gets to me.
If Thurman fought Mayweather and lost, and fought Brooke and lost, and fought Pacquiao and lost, I'd then consider him a gatekeeper as long as he didn't retire, because he's contended. He was a contender. He contended. He didn't win his contest, and he's now a gatekeeper.
I still think he's got more left in him.
Well, I think you have it. You have the definition. You disagree on the definition that we've got of contender and gatekeeper. And so it
not necessarily
doesn't occur for you the same way that it does for us. Like gatekeeper is not a bad thing in my eyes because there are a lot of good fighters that are gatekeepers.
I don't have a different definition. I'm just placing him in a different spot just because he's lost those fights to Pacquiao. I'm saying I don't think he's out of his contender status. That's what I'm saying.
That's fair.
Yeah.
All right. So you guys didn't even answer the question of what you think of this fight. Like, does Bradley beat Rios?
Yes.
Is it going to be good?
Yeah, of course.
Will it be entertaining?
I think it's going to be one where you grit your teeth because they both take a lot of damage and they both look like they've been in a fight. And I think it goes all 12 and Bradley wins a very wide decision but has been punched in the face repeatedly all night.
Odds of a DQ?
No, I don't think so.
All right, fine. Odds or over under on Bradley's purse?
1.5.
I'll pick the over on that.
Yeah, me too. Tony Thompson tested positive for a PED or just some drug after the David Price fight. But It was a blood pressure medication, and with Tony Thompson at his age and his weight, he actually might need that pill or medication, whatever he took. So does this change anything about Thompson beating Price? My answer is no, nothing at all.
It changes everything because he was clearly
No.
using diuretics so that he can make the weight for heavyweight because he didn't want to come in overweight on fight night. And
this was a masking agent?
He would have lost the fight on the scales without the use of diuretics, absolutely. No, it's a ludicrous claim that anyone reporting should be ashamed of. It's so silly to bring this up 2 years down the line, and they've said that the delay was because Thompson appealed it and kept things in legal loopholes for ages. These systems don't take years to come out. You have to take your share of the blame for not expediting it.
Fair enough. So let's preview next week's fights. And there's not much to say because it's kind of a... If you like prospects, this is a good week for you. So we got Albert Pagara, who's one of the top prospects in the Philippines right now. He's a top 10 rated super bantamweight. They're fighting in Dubai. Pagara's 21. He does have some power. I don't know if I said this before, but it's in the super bantamweight division. His opponent's pretty beatable. But this is a guy to look out for, Albert Pagara out of the Philippines. I'm not going to be on TV here, unfortunately, unless you live in the Philippines. Showtime that has a Showbox card. Evgen Kitrov going to headline facing Nick Brinson. And Brinson's the guy who just lost to Andre Durrell and Dominic Wade. But he does have a win over Jorge Melendez, as does Kitrov. And Kitrov's one of those guys who's got a deep amateur pedigree, and a lot of people think that this guy could potentially be the future of the middleweight division in a few years. He's just not there yet. Exciting fighter, too. He really does want to knock everything out.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Good. Excellent analysis. On the undercard, Sergey Derevianchenko. I don't really know how to say his name. He's going to fight Alvin Ayala. He's got a really deep amateur pedigree as well. Sergey does, and he's like 22-1 in the World Series of Boxing. So he actually has a much more pro style experience than a lot of guys who move up. So that 5-4 is really.
Is he with main events yet?
No, I think he's probably going to be with PBC.
No, really? What gives you that impression?
Well, Kitrov's with PBC.
Oh, I'm with you. No, it's just obviously New York-based guy, Russian background, smashing people apart, middle-ish weight. It just that seems like a recipe for main events.
Right. Well, here's the thing about Derevianchenko. He's 5'7" and a middleweight. He's really little. So his future in the division is, hugely dependent on if he can develop a style where he can succeed against these bigger guys at that fairly short height for the division. The best card of the weekend is going to be on Saturday night. I think it's going to be on Fox Sports 1. Johan Perez versus Dmitry Mikhalenko, and Yoandri Salinas versus Manuel Avila. So Mikhalenko and Avila are both undefeated guys, and this is going to be a Golden Boy Live, I think, affair. Salinas fought Scott Quigg to a draw. He's a really tough Cuban fighter. Perez is really tough. So this is going to be like two really strong tests for prospects, and we'll see how they do.
So with Dimitri's obviously another Russian up and coming.
So
you were critical. No, but you were. This one lives in Russia, but you were critical on Campbell for his age. Are these prospects not a bit old, a bit long in the tooth?
Maybe. What are you trying to get at?
To double standard. Are you holding Campbell to a higher standard
Absolutely.
than you are? Yeah, exactly.
Absolutely. But here's the reason why. So Mikhalenko is 29 years old, and one of the things I don't understand is a lot of the Russian fighters, they get their nicknames like
from their occupation,
right? Like,
exactly.
Is it their dad's occupation? Like we got the mechanic, we've gotten like the ice pick, the professor, a lot of weird nicknames like that. But Mikhalenko, definitely, he's old. He's 29 years old. So I guess it's a little unfair to call him a prospect. And I don't even know what his amateur background is, if he's even got one. And he's fought in domestically in Russia his whole career. So he's only been here for like a year in America fighting. So far, so good. And this should be a really good test because Johan Perez, I think the last time we saw him, he fought Mauricio Herrera on the Canelo Angulo undercard and lost a majority decision. I thought Herrera won it clearly, but Perez did have some argument, and he also beat up Paul Spadafora a while ago. It's a good card. We'll do coverage of it, and you guys seem to want to talk about Amir Khan now, so let's do that. Amir Khan signed with Al Haymon in April of 2014, so basically a month before he fought Luis Collazo on the Mayweather-Maidana undercard. And following that, he fought Devin Alexander in the following December, later in that year. He won a decision, just as he did against Collazo. And then just this past April, he fought Chris Algieri in a headlining Spike TV card. So what's going on? He signed with Al Haymon, and I'm pretty sure he had this assumption that signing with Al Haymon would do wonders for his career and possibly land him the Mayweather fight. But instead, we've gotten nothing. Nothing really. And Khan just seems to be looking worse and worse.
Well, he's the odd one for me in that people talk about Haymon having this like a regimented way that he deals with his fighters. They were very locked down social media. They're all very thank Al Haymon. They don't really speculate too much on their careers. They let him take care of things, almost like that's, you know, they've been instructed to let him handle things, and he'll deliver them these big belts, title shots, meaningful events, and big paydays. And then you almost forget that Khan signed with him because of the way that he conducts himself, the amounts he's being paid, and the fights that he's in. It's like he's with a different Al Haymon. That he, you know, what was the advice from Al Haymon to Khan? Was the advice go and look really cloying and desperate? You know, the things that he's coming out with lately, he's talking about how he'll fight Mayweather for peanuts. He doesn't even need to, you know, and it just really like degrading himself almost in the way that he's conducted himself. And it doesn't feel like the same, I don't know, approach that every other Haymon fighter has, where their social media, you know, even if they post something stupid, it gets stripped down, you know, minutes later when someone on the Haymon team sees it.
Maybe it's possible that Khan's screwed himself over. I mean, there was a story recently, I think it was Leonard Ellerby came out and said Khan's going about getting a Mayweather fight completely the wrong way, and he's really turned off Mayweather to a potential fight with him, meaning Khan's over here gesturing in the media, trying to negotiate through news articles and through websites versus doing it in a meeting in closed doors. And, you know, one of the things we do know is that Mayweather likes to negotiate in secret, and when things come out is when things start to take a long time. You know,
well, the cynic in me though, before the first Maidana fight was signed, Mayweather put a poll out on social media about who his next opponent should be, and the overwhelming winner was Amir Khan.
No, it wasn't. It was Rod Salka.
I wonder whether Al Haymon's then signed this guy and said, "Don't worry, I'll take care of this guy. I'll tie him up with loads of odd fights. I'll even take a cut for the privilege of ruining his career and getting him out of our hair for us."
What would Mayweather be fearing here?
I don't know. I don't think
Are
it's
you
a
making
fear.
an
It's just
insinuation?
no. I think that. So you have to follow me on this one because it's a bit depthy. Is that Mayweather can earn more fighting against people that are American based or have, you know, Mexican following, or, you know, there's a lot more significance for him in terms of pay-per-view in the US. Khan's not a US superstar in the same way that, you know, Canelo can bring views in. And if the fans are overwhelmingly pressuring for a certain fight, they already had the Pacquiao fight being pressured. Having the Khan as a second one, it only steals from that pot. That here's the second guy that you're not fighting, and they just thought, get rid of this guy because promotionally he's a nightmare. We both know that you beat him, but it's not going to do very good numbers. It's not going to earn very much. It's just a pain, really.
Yeah.
And so rather than confront this pain, we're going to bring him in the house, tell him he's part of the family, but really he's going to be sat at the kids' table, and we just kick him the scraps.
Yeah, so, I mean, to really surmise that, basically they brought him on board with no intention of him ever fighting Mayweather.
Or doing anything that's going to help him ever.
Right. It's actually really true, though, that Mayweather's in a no-win situation with his fight with Khan. If he beats Khan, you know, it's like, well, you know, Maidana ruined him, Prescott ruined him, Danny Garcia ruined him, so you beat nobody. And with
no, it doesn't matter. Like, Mayweather already hit the pinnacle of his career, guys. Like, the next fight is irrelevant.
Well,
he already did everything.
We know that.
Yeah. Well, no, everybody knows that. Yeah, every casual sports fan, the 4.8 million people who bought the pay-per-view know that. Everybody knows that was the fight, man.
You're not reading the comments over here.
What'd you say?
You're not reading the comments every time Berto or Khan is brought up on Reddit Boxing.
The comments aren't that Berto's going to win.
Well, I don't think I've ever read one of those comments.
That's what
I've read more people thinking Lemieux has a chance against Golovkin than Berto against Mayweather. Here's another question: if he fights Berto, do you guys have any problem with that? Like, that's his way he wants to go out?
Well, just kind of to Simon's point, though, just really quickly, Berto doesn't have a following in the U.S. Like, a fight with Khan would do tremendously better than a fight with Berto.
What if it doesn't move it that much, though? What if they've done their analysis or whatever, and it says, like, okay, we'll do 300,000 more buys?
I bet Berto's cheaper and isn't substantially worse view rates. I think the price they pay Khan...
He's significantly cheaper. Right.
I think their profit and loss doesn't work out.
From a negotiating standpoint,
he'll capitulate to every demand. He'll be cheap as chips, and the numbers won't be that much worse, in fairness.
Right. Well,
and he won't do all this stuff on social media like Khan's been doing.
I think the only reason to fight Berto, the only logical reason, is because it's just easy, and he wants to go out on an easy fight. What's wrong with that? It's the end of the man's
I like people's theories about how he's going to be doing it as a thank you to Al Haymon. You got me this massive mega payday in sports history, and now I'm going to give you a Floyd Mayweather fight for free TV on PBC rather than doing it as a pay-per-view.
Well, he has to.
Doing it as growing the PBC brand to make PBC more legitimate, as here is an absolute stellar fighter fighting on PBC.
No, that's exactly what it has to be. I don't think he could fight Berto on pay-per-view. I don't think that's a viable. I don't think that's a viable fight.
It would be hilarious.
I think if it is Berto, it has to be on free TV, just without a doubt.
Unless they had some crazy undercard where it was like they did a tournament of like 8 random welterweights of all your favorite welterweights, and they did like 3-round eliminators like they do on Prize Fighter here, and Mayweather said, whoever wins this, I will definitely fight as my next fight. So I'm only going to do one more. If you want it to be Thurman, Khan, any of these guys, they have to win this little mini event on the undercard.
You're getting crazy.
Then you could pay-per-view that.
Yeah, then you pay-per-view that fight, but let's take that out of the picture for a second.
No, that's insane. That'll never happen.
It'd be great. How awesome would that be, right? That'd be awesome. But I think the bottom line is, if it's Berto, it's on free TV. If it's Khan, it's pay-per-view. Part of why we haven't gotten the announcement yet could be because of how difficult it is to do everything associated with a free TV fight, because that's so far off the realm of what Mayweather normally does.
Well, my theory here is that the holdup is that this is his last fight on his contract, and Showtime is not willing to let Mayweather go off into the sunset without some sort of clause that says, if you do decide to come back, you have free reign to choose whoever you want. They probably are saying, if you are really serious about doing this, we're not going to let you do this. We're not going to approve this fight, and we're going to, make things difficult. That's probably what they want. And if he wants to fight on CBS, then you're right. I think there are a bunch of extra things that need to get put in place, especially for a big fight like Mayweather. The thing is, we're 6 weeks away. They might want to, hurry up with this stuff. And but I think that it's really the option on his future that CBS is trying to lock down. And if he wanted to do, a Canelo or a Pacquiao rematch further down the line, which are both possible and viable fights, those guys would want to do it on HBO. And with Mayweather not having a contract, I think he'd be willing to do that. And I've actually, someone said, I think it was Lance Pugmire of the LA Times, he's been tweeting out that says that it's really looking likely that this is going to be a pay-per-view fight and not on CBS. Yeah,
there's a million moving parts to this. I mean, the other angle, of course, is that the shorter the time between the announcement and the fight, the shorter the window of criticism is, where every rival promoter and media outlet can talk about how it's a bad matchup, it's not selling very well, no one wants to see it. It's but either you can't really bitch about it if you announce it and then have to fight a week later.
All right. So is it possible that Al Heyman's real intention of signing Khan, who he's been beaten like 3 times before, was to use Khan as an opponent for the young guys coming up, like Thurman, like Spence, possibly like Broner, if Broner ever gets his act together?
I guess, but I mean, I'd need to see some evidence of that materializing before I'd support that theory.
No, yeah, why not though? I think that's fine. He had to give Khan some fights where Khan thought it was going in a different direction, right? And then once Mayweather retires, now it's time to use him as that stepping stone for his up-and-comers.
Khan should have took the Berto fight, because that's been a sure bet in the past to get.
Yeah, that's how you get Mayweather.
You
either beat Berto or you beat Berto.
Yeah.
All right, so we're pretty much done with the rundown of our podcast, but I want to talk about something from our last podcast, Simon. Before you left, you and I, if you guys didn't know, Simon and I did a podcast where we talked about all the boxing that Simon was going to miss, and he cried a little bit. He was very upset that he was going to miss some fights. But one of the things that we did do is that Simon made predictions on a lot of fights. And now let's go through the list and see how Simon did on these fights that he missed. So first up, we had Robert Stieglitz versus Robert... actually, it was Robert Stieglitz versus Arthur Abraham.
Arthur Abraham, there you go.
Simon picked Abraham by UD, and we actually got Abraham by knockout.
Yeah, I know.
Very nicely done, Simon. I mean, you didn't get it completely correct, but that's one for you. Ik Yang versus Cesar Rene Cuenca. Simon, like most of us, except for me, picked Yang by a stoppage, and no, Cuenca by stoppage. I'm kidding, by decision. So 1 for 2.
Oh, man, him.
Donaire versus Anthony Setul. Simon, you had Donaire by a pretty early stoppage, and it was a Donaire early stoppage. Scott Quigg versus Kiko Martinez. You thought Quigg would get a TKO, and he indeed did. You and I both agreed on that one. So far, you're 3 and 4. 3 out of 4. Darlys Perez versus Crolla. You picked Perez by TKO. Ouch. Crolla should have won that fight, but it was a draw. So now you are, what is this now? 3 out of 5?
3 for 5.
3 for 5. All right, Jason, keep count. All right, Sam Eggington versus Glenn Foote. TKO for Sam Eggington. Rightfully so. He destroyed Glenn Foote. Looked fantastic, by the way. Eggington, only 21. Very excited for his future. So add another one for Simon. Amir Imam versus Fernando Angulo. I don't know about this one, Simon. You predicted Imam by a decision. Why did you do that? You were wrong. Imam stoppage. Brutal stoppage. Chavez Jr. versus Marco Reyes. Again, you're wrong. Chavez Jr. by stoppage. Chavez Jr. hasn't stopped somebody since, 2010?
I thought it was a soft enough touch, though, that...
No, Chavez Jr. was soft enough for the touch. But you were right. Chavez won. You had Jojo Arroyo beating Arthur Villanueva. Indeed, you were correct. Arroyo did get a decision. Chris Arreola versus Fred Cassie. Now, you said in the actual list, in what should I put in the predictions, Arreola late TKO, but you actually said beforehand, Arreola is probably not going to win this fight, that this is a fight that Arreola will easily lose, and you actually did say draw. And guess what it was? It was a draw. So even though it says here...
I'm having that.
Yeah, Arreola late TKO, I'm going to give it to you because you gave in to not wanting to be wrong, I think. Because it was such a, logic says this is an easy fight for Arreola. Frampton versus Alejandro Gonzalez. Simon, you said Frampton would get a TKO in 4 rounds, and no. If anything, Frampton almost got TKO'd in 4 rounds because he had a pretty bad first round, but came back and won a decision. John Pascal versus Yunieski Gonzalez. I love this. Simon predicted Gonzalez by TKO. He said Pascal's not winning, and Pascal did win. He did get a decision, but
no, Simon wins that one.
Yeah, we got to give it to you because Gonzalez was way better than advertised. Yeah. And lastly, you predicted Sergey Mohammadi would lose a decision to Najib Mohammadi. You were just trying to be different, and you were wrong.
All right. So
no, I'm kidding. He predicted Kovalev TKO. I'm just messing with him. He didn't even respond because he's probably upset now.
All right. So that's 9 for 13.
Oh, so you got Yang wrong, you got Perez wrong, and you got... What was the other one that he got wrong? No, he only got 2 wrong. So that's 11 for 13. Simon, are you still there?
I think when you go back and listen to this, you'll find the counting a little differently.
Hey.
Yeah, it depends whether you're going with it being 100% spot on or whether it's the right guy.
I was just going by the right guy. What were you going with, Jason?
Oh, I was good. I went spot on.
Oh, well, I mean, 9 for 13 spot on is pretty good. Let's take it.
Yeah. Well,
I'll take you to Vegas.
I gave him the Gonzalez thing because he should have gotten that no matter what.
Well, if Simon would have went with his gut, I think he would have been more accurate. He would have probably had a 10
I
for
actually
13.
said at the time, I think, that I knew I was being controversial as well in that one.
Yeah, but you had really good reasoning. And all the signs were there, and you were almost right.
Yeah.
If Pascal was a normal
different
guy,
night, that would have happened, I'm sure.
Absolutely.
Pascal was just not normal.
That was not far from the realm of possibility.
All right, so Simon, it is good to have you back. Not any diss to Dean. We love Dean, and in fact, Dean might make a comeback very soon to replace me on the podcast permanently. No, I'm kidding.
And me, and Jason.
And yep.
Thanks for listening. Send us emails. For those of you who have sent us emails at podcast@SundayPuncher.com, thank you for doing that. And if you haven't, we still want to know, what are you going to watch? The Mosley Mayorga pay-per-view or Maris Santa Cruz on ESPN with Teddy Atlas on the commentary? Let us know. Follow us on Twitter, Sunday_Puncher, at Sunday_Puncher, and we'll talk to you guys, or I guess we'll talk at you guys next week. Thanks for listening.